Hi guys, Amy G here. Today we're going to be doing a sew along. It's 9638. I love this matching skirt and jacket. It's just to die. And please forgive me. I am actually feeling a little under the weather. I actually feel quite crappy. But I had filmed the sew along and then I had forgot to film my intro, and so I needed to get that done today so I could put the video out for you guys, because I know that the patterns are in the stores and you guys have already started buying them. Thank you again so much. Let's get started.
Okay guys, so we're going to start with View B, which is our jacket. Now I'm going to be doing mine out of just one fabric. I'm using a lightweight yellow wool. If you do choose to contrast your jacket like you see here in View B, you are going to cut your collar, your facing, and your sleeve and cuff out of a contrasting fabric. Remember that on the back of the envelope, you always have a list of suggested fabrics, any interfacing, and notions that you're going to need to complete this project. Let's go over the pattern pieces you're going to need to cut. You're going to cut pattern piece number 9. This is our tabs for our shoulder. You're going to cut 4. You're going to cut out pattern piece number 1. This is our front. You're going to cut out 2. You're going to cut out pattern piece number 2. This is our side front, and you're going to cut out 2 of fabric and 2 of lining. You're going to cut out pattern piece number 5. This is our side back. You're going to cut 2 of fabric and also 2 of lining. You're going to cut out pattern piece number 4. This is our back. You're going to cut 1 on the fold of fabric and 1 on the fold of lining. You're going to cut out pattern piece number 12. This is our sleeve, and you're going to cut out 2 of fabric and 2 of lining. We have pattern piece number 3. You're going to cut out 2 of fabric and 2 of lining. This is our pocket. We've got pattern piece number 13. This is our sleeve band. You're also going to cut 2 of fabric and 2 of interfacing. Pattern piece number 10 is our front band, and you're going to cut 2 of fabric and 2 of interfacing. You're going to cut out pattern piece number 11. You're going to cut out the back band. That's 1 on the fold of the fabric, and you're going to cut 1 on the fold of interfacing. You're going to cut out pattern piece number 7. This is our under collar. You're going to cut 2 of fabric and 2 of interfacing. Then we have our upper collar, and you're going to cut 1 on the fold of fabric and 1 on the fold of interfacing. And then our very last piece is pattern piece number 8, which is our front facing, and you're going to cut 2 of fabric and 2 of interfacing. Now once you have everything cut out of your fabric, your lining, and any pieces that needed to be interfaced, we can start sewing. Make sure that you transfer all of your darts, marking, notches, anywhere where you're attaching a zipper. All of those markings are going to be really important as we sew our jacket together. Okay, we're going to start with our side front and one of our pockets, and you should have transferred your stitching lines for your pocket, so you should have transferred that to the right side of your side front and also to your pocket. So you want to make sure that you're going to align those. The easiest way for me to do it is just I take my pins and I align my dots as best as I can. And then I'm going to pin right through both layers. So once I have it pinned in place, I know it's not going anywhere. I actually like to sew on this side of my fabric. So what I have done is I transferred my entire bounding box to my fabric because it makes it, one, easier to sew in a straight line, but also it lets me start in the center and work my way around so I can end in the center. It's much easier to start, backstitch, and stop exactly in the same place when you're in the center than it is to try and do all of that in one tiny dot corner, okay? So for me, I like to start in the middle and then I work my way around the bounding box, stopping where I started and backstitching. Go ahead and stitch around your bounding box. Make sure that you do the same exact thing to your other side front and your pocket. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and cut our bounding box open. So I like to use my small rotary cutter to start my line. And then using my scissors, you're going to cut into the corners Don't go past your dot. And then you're going to turn your pocket all the way to the inside and you're going to press this. So you're going to go ahead and take this to your machine and you're going to press this out nice and neatly. You're going to do your other one the same exact way. All right, once you've gone ahead and pressed your pocket to the inside, the right side of your side front should be facing up. You're going to go ahead and grab your zipper. Now you may notice that I tacked the very top of my zipper together. This just makes it easier to keep it closed while I'm going to place it underneath. And you want to try and make sure that you're placing it evenly so that you have the same amount of zipper tape on either side. And then I'm going to pin mine in place. Okay, now we're going to head to the sewing machine and we're going to edge stitch around our bounding box. Okay, once we've sewn our zipper in place, I'll trim this away now so that it can just be out of the way. Now what we're going to do is we're going to grab your other pocket piece and you're going to turn this around. You're going to lay them on top of each other so that right sides are facing each other. You're also going to make sure that you're aligning your notches. You should have notches both on your pocket and your pocket lining. And you're going to go ahead and pin this in place. Now you're going to head to your sewing machine. You're going to stitch only through your pocket and your pocket facing all the way around and along the side, closing up the entire pocket. So now that we have our pocket sewn all the way around, we can go ahead and attach our front to our side front. So I'm going to just move my pocket out of the way. I'm going to grab my front and with right sides facing each other, I'm going to pin first at my notches, making sure that those are aligning. Okay, now using 5/8 of an inch, you're going to start at the bottom, back stitch at the beginning and at the end. You're going to stitch these together. You're going to do the same thing with your other side front and front. All right, once you've stitched your side front to your front, you're going to go ahead and top stitch. Just make sure that your pocket is completely out of the way when you do your top stitching. Okay, once you're done top stitching, give it another good press and you can baste your pocket to the front along the bottom the way that I did. You can go ahead and set this aside for just a second. You're going to grab your back and your side back. So with right sides facing, you're going to go ahead and do the same exact thing. You're going to lay your side back over your back and you're going to align the notches. You should have double notches here because it's the back. So I'm going to pin there. You're going to pin your other side back to your back the same way and you're going to stitch using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Don't forget to back stitch at the beginning and at the end. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and sew our shoulders together. So with right sides facing, you're going to place your fronts over the top. Oh, you're going to place your fronts on top of the back and we're going to pin our shoulders. Okay, now head to your sewing machine. You're going to stitch your shoulders together using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. All right, we're going to start working on our collar. So what I want you to do is you should have done some stay stitching here to reinforce the corner. You're going to clip to that point, but don't clip through your stitching, okay? Just like that. You're going to do that for both sides. Okay? Now we're going to go ahead and grab our under collar. Okay, with right sides facing, we're going to start with the shorter end of the collar. You can easily find it because you should have one single notch there. You're going to match that single notch to the single notch. Let's work on one side at a time with the single notch that is on your jacket front. I'm gonna go ahead and pin. Now you should also have dots that you marked. I want you to go ahead and pin right where those dots are. Just like this. Now we're gonna stitch from dot to dot using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, so I stitched from dot to dot, okay, in between the dots, the big dot and the little dot, and then I went ahead and did the same exact thing on the other side. Now we're gonna go ahead and pin the entire collar. So I'm gonna start at the center back. I also have notches there, so you should make sure that you are pinning and matching up your notches. And then you're going to bring your raw edges together. And this is going to go directly into that dart that you should have marked on your fabric. So I'm going to put a little pin here at the end of my dart. I'm going to bring my dart legs together. I'm going to open up this seam allowance so it lays flat. And I'm going to do the same thing working the other direction. Okay, I like to start in the center and stitch all the way in one direction till I stitch completely off my dart, and then start again at the center back and work my way in the other direction. All right, once we've sewn our undercollar to our jacket, I want you to go ahead, clip into any curves, and then I want you to press your seams open, just like this. Once you have pressed your seams open, set this aside for just a second. You're gonna go ahead and grab the tabs for your shoulders. You're gonna place them right sides facing, and just like I've done here, you're going to stitch along one long end, down the bottom and up the other side using 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, and then you can trim and turn this right side out. Go ahead and do both of your tabs, turn them right side out and give them a good press. Okay, so now that you have your shoulder tabs done, you can go ahead and put on your snap. So I've already done one snap, it looks like this, and you're gonna attach the other part of your snap on your shoulder seam. So you have two options. You could use snaps like I'm using, or if you wanted to do buttons, instead of putting a snap here, you could create a buttonhole. That is up to you, and then you would put a button here. So there is a marking, but I actually like to have my finished tab sort of in place, and then I like to see sort of where that snap hits. And then using my marking pen, I'm just gonna mark where that is so that I know it's sitting comfortably. Okay, so now I know that I'm gonna put my the second part of my snap right here. I'm gonna do the same thing on the other shoulder. Go ahead and attach your snaps following the instructions on whichever pack of snaps you purchase, because there are several different kinds. Or like I said, if you plan on doing a button, you could make your buttonhole on your tab, and then go ahead and sew your button on now, because we're going to be lining this and we don't want to have to worry about trying to get a snap or a button placed here after your lining has already been attached. All right, once you have your snaps in place, we can go ahead and sew our side seams together. So with right sides facing, we're going to go ahead and pin our side seam. Make sure to match your notch. You're going to pin both your side seams the same way. Now head over to your sewing machine. You're just going to stitch this closed using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Do both your side seams. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started on our sleeve. So as you can see, I almost forgot I was filming. And I put my sleeve right sides facing and went ahead and sewed together my underarm seam. So go ahead and do that. And now we're gonna go set this aside for just a second. We're gonna work on our cuff. So grab one cuff and one zipper. So I didn't have a short zipper, so I'm just gonna make do with what I got. what you're going to want to do is you're going to, on the unnotched sides, okay, you have a notch at the top. You are going to, and at the bottom, you have a notch at the top and at the bottom, no notches on the sides. You're going to go ahead and turn and press 5/8 of an inch. So I always mark where the middle is on my cuff. And you have a fold line on that pattern piece, but I just like to transfer where that middle is because I know that's where I'm going to fold. Okay, so I'm going to show you how I went ahead and did mine. It's slightly different than the instructions give you, but I just found it to be faster. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab one side of my zipper, making sure that the teeth are on the out, right? You want to make sure your teeth are not facing the inside of your cuff. And I'm going to fold the very top of my zipper tape down, and I'm going to place it at that fold line. And basically what I want to do is I want to sandwich my zipper. So I'm going to hold that in place. I'm going to fold this over onto itself, just like that, and I'm going to pin it. I just found this to be faster, and I only had to do one stitch as opposed to two. So I'm going to go ahead and do that there, and then I'll just trim the excess zipper after I'm done. So I'm going to do one side at a time, and basically what you're going to do now is you're just going to stitch along the edge through all layers, catching both sides. Okay, so now it's caught on both sides. You're going to do the same thing. So I like to zip my zipper back up and place it where it needs to go. It keeps it from being confusing, and it also lets me sort of align it. I'm going to match that up again to that fold line that I have. Hold in place. Once I have it held in place, I can open the zipper up, and then I'm going to pin. You're going to do the same exact thing we just did to the other side, and you're going to do both your cuffs the same way. Okay, once you have your cuffs done and you're going to do both, I went ahead and cut the extending part of the zipper because I no longer need it, but I am remembering not to open my zipper all the way up because it will, the zipper pull will come completely off. So if you want to wait and cut off the excess after you sew it onto your sleeve, you can certainly do that. So I'm going to turn my sleeve right side out, and I'm going to turn my zipper wrong side out. And then you should have had 2 dots and a notch on your sleeve that you needed to transfer. You're going to match up the dots and your notch to your cuff as you pin. Once you have it pinned, you're going to go ahead and stitch all the way around using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and ease our sleeve in. I've gone ahead and done one sleeve already, so let me just show you what I did. So I'm going to place my underarm seam and my side seam, make sure that those are matching and lining up. Now, if you need a refresher on easing a set-in sleeve, we have that as part of a standards video. If you have, my fabric has a little bit of give here around the sleeve cap, so I didn't create my 2 rows of basting stitches. But if your fabric does not have any give, then you will want to create the 2 rows of basting stitches from notch to notch. I know generally you do it from dot to dot, but trust me, do it from notch to notch. It makes it much easier to ease that in if you need to pull the threads to help your sleeve cap sort of gather. You don't want any ripples, you don't want any folds, and you don't want any pleats, but you want to pull enough so that it creates a little bit of a pull here and curbs your sleeve cap. For me, like I said, I have enough give that I'm not going to do that, and instead I'll probably just clip as I need to. So I start by pinning at my underarm seam and my side seam. Then I'll work from the inside of the jacket. I want to, of course, match up my notches. So you should have 2 notches for the back and 1 notch for the front. And then I always mark the dot on my shoulder so I know exactly where that's going to go. And then you should have another dot, so dot to dot. And now I know that I need to ease my sleeve cap here a bit. And so the way I like to do it is on the jacket, right, not the sleeve, I'm just gonna make some snips, not making sure not to go past my seam allowance, of course. And you see that as I sew, that spreads open and it takes up that ease without me having to do the 2 rows of gathering stitches. So this is just the way I prefer to do it, but of course you can do whatever method works best for you. And then if I need to ease anywhere else, I just do the same thing. Awesome. Now, once we have it all pinned in place, you're going to go ahead to your sewing machine and you're going to stitch using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance all the way around. You're going to do both your sleeves the same way. Okay, now that we have both of our sleeves attached, we can go ahead and put together our lining. So I'm not going to walk you through that because we've already done it. You're going to put your lining together the same way that you did the body of your jacket. You're going to attach the collar the same way that you did. You're going to press your seams open the same way, and you're going to attach your sleeve. Now the only difference is that this sleeve lining obviously doesn't have a cuff because the cuff, we've already attached it. So this will just fold in when we sew it to the seam of the cuff, but that's the only difference. Everything else is put together exactly the same way that we did for the jacket. So go ahead, grab your lining pieces, your facing, your collar, and go ahead and put your lining together. Okay, once you have your lining sewn together, we're gonna go ahead and attach it to the jacket. So with right sides facing, I like to start at the collar. So I'm going to start to pin at the center back of my collar. And I'm going to work my way down one side, come back to the center, and work my way in the other direction. Now it's really important that you line up where your collar is, okay? Because if you don't, you'll end up with an imperfect collar, and you want that to be nice and sharp. So you want to make sure that those seams are perfectly aligned. And I like to open up that seam and pin right where that little dot is. Okay, now I'm going to start in the middle again and work my way down, pinning the same exact way. All right, now that I have the entire lining and jacket pinned together, I'm gonna go ahead and start sewing. Just like I pin, I like to sew. So I'm gonna start in the middle, work my way down one collar and front, and then start back in the middle and work my way in the other direction. Okay, once you've stitched all the way around, I like to make some clips, sort of remove all of this so when I turn this right side out, it's not super bulky. Okay, once you've stitched all the way around, you can go ahead and you can trim off any corners, clip into anything you need to clip into, and then you're gonna turn your jacket right side out. You wanna make sure that you poke out your corners, and you're going to continue until you have the entire jacket right side out and your collar points nice and sharp. Okay, once your jacket is turned right side out, go ahead and press the front and your collar all the way around. Okay, once you have pressed it and you want to make sure that your collar is nice and sharp, now we're going to go ahead and sew our sleeve lining to our sleeve. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to turn your cuff up, sort of just like this, so that you can get to that seam allowance. And then I like to put my sleeve lining through my sleeve. Okay, so you always have the option of slip stitching closed your lining to the hem of your cuff, right? You can do that. Super easy, no problem. If you like hand sewing, that's cool. If you maybe don't so much like hand sewing and you want to finish it a different way, I'll show you what they're showing you in the instructions. So my sleeve lining is inside of my sleeve, and I'm basically making sure that my underarm seams are matched. Okay, so this is the underarm seam of my lining. This is the underarm sleeve of my jacket. And I'm basically just going to turn the seam allowances onto each other as if they were being sewn. And you can either pin this together so that you don't lose it, like this, or I like to hold it. So I'm gonna go ahead and put my hand through inside the lining in the jacket, and I'm going to grab that lining. Okay, once I have it pinched, I can go ahead and pull this out, and don't let go of it. And now I can go ahead and pin. This makes it much easier than if you were just trying to do it without anchoring it. And so now I'm just gonna go around and around, pinning my sleeve to my lining along that hem. The trick is just to grab it and then not let go of it until you pull it out from underneath. Okay, now to know that you've done it correctly, your sleeve and your lining should look like this, right? So you're just gonna tuck in as you're sewing, making sure that you don't catch your sleeve and you're only sewing through the seam allowances. You can follow the guide that you already have on your sleeve from adding your cuff, or you could just obviously follow your 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, and you're going to stitch all the way around. Go really slow because this is a tiny opening, so you'll just have to do a little bit at a time, adjust your sleeve, a little bit at a time, adjust your sleeve. Okay, when you're done and you turn your sleeve to the wrong side, you'll have a really nice finish on your lining with your cuff. Now we can go ahead and turn the jacket right side out again by pulling the sleeves. And all we need to do is finish the bands. Set your jacket aside for just a second and grab your front and back bands. Okay, so I went ahead and basted together the bottom so that my lining and my jacket are now one, right? So I went ahead and sewed through both layers. And then with my bands, what I did was with right sides facing, you're going to stitch along the short ends, making sure that you align your notches, right? You have notches on both your sides. And now we're gonna go ahead and pin this to our jacket. Okay, so before we attach it, I want to point out really quickly, you might not be able to see it on camera, but I have a stitching line that's 5/8 of an inch away. It helps me to know exactly where to turn this over once we have to close the band. So I just wanted to point that out because I'm not sure you could see it. So with my jacket, right side up, so right sides will be facing. We're gonna go ahead and pin our band to our jacket. Let me grab some pins. Okay, I'm gonna match up my notches. So you should have a notch on your band and a notch on the hem of your jacket. And then of course you wanna match up those side seams. Those should be lining up. And then I'll go ahead and pin in between those areas. And your band should be extending beyond your jacket, okay? So if you see that, that's the way it's supposed to be. Okay, so now we're gonna go ahead and stitch this down. So you're just gonna sew one straight line, okay? Starting at one end, back stitching at the beginning, and at the end, you're gonna stitch your band onto your jacket. All right, so I've gone ahead and pressed my seam allowances down towards the band, and then I went ahead and pressed up 5/8 of an inch. Now what we're going to do is we're going to close out the front, so I'm going to fold the band onto itself, matching that up. I'm going to go ahead and pin. You're going to do the same thing on the other side. You're going to bring your bands together so that right sides are facing, and go ahead and pin. Now you're going to head to your sewing machine, you're going to close this, and then we're going to turn this right side out. All right, you're going to turn this to the inside. Make sure that you poke out that corner, okay? And now you're going to do that on both sides. So I already turned this one to the right side, as you can see. And I'm going to go ahead and pin this in place. So since I've already folded that 5/8 of an inch, it makes it really easy to just place this along that seam and pin. So you have two options here to finish off your jacket. You can either go ahead and slip stitch this closed on the inside, or you can stitch in the ditch. So it really just depends on which method you prefer. I'm gonna probably stitch in the ditch, so I like to go ahead and pin my band all the way around, and then I take it to the machine, and then I literally stitch in the ditch, which just means I'm going to stitch right in between these two seams, catching the underside of my band so that I don't have to hand stitch. Now that I have my entire band pinned, I can go ahead and stitch in the ditch to finish that off. Okay, so for you to finish your jacket, here are the only steps you have left. So the only thing that you have left to do after you finish off your band, however you decide whether you're going to slip stitch it closed or you're going to stitch in the ditch, that's up to you. What you're going to do now is you're going to make your buttonholes. Now mine have disappeared, but so I'm just going to grab my front piece and remark where my buttonholes are going to go. So according to your machine and how your machine does buttonholes, you're going to go ahead and transfer your buttonhole markings, make your buttonholes, attach your buttons, and then what you have left to do are your snaps. So here's what I recommend. Go ahead and do your buttonholes, sew on your buttons, and try it on, and then turn your collar so that it lays naturally. Wherever it lays naturally and you like, mark where you want your snaps to go. Now the reason I say that is because some of us might be bustier than others, and so you want to make sure that your collar is laying nice and flat. And so I always notice that if I put my snaps in first before trying it on, I always wish I could adjust. So just as a safety precaution, I always try on the jacket first, then with a little pin, I mark where I want my snaps to go, make those markings. You're gonna add a snap at both ends of your collar. You're gonna do that through the jacket, right? So you're gonna have one snap here, and then obviously the snap closure on the bottom. After you are done with that, you are all done.